In this week's edition of the Food Grower 5 Things podcast, I'm going to be talking to you about 5 things that you should really consider before starting a business in growing. A business based around growing things. Maybe you're growing vegetables for a market garden, you're growing plants for production. Maybe you're just trying to turn your hobby into something that generates you some income. And these are 5 things that I really think that you should consider before you take that step. I've been running Urban Herbs for the last 12 years now. And for the last 12 years, these are all things that I've had to come to terms with. Some of them in a good way, and some of them are things that I've actually had to overcome. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Here are the 5 things that I think you should think about before starting a growing business. The first thing that you should consider before starting a business based around growing things is that this is not a job. Sure, it might be a business that gives you income. It certainly does that for me with Urban Herbs. It is the primary source of my income. It allows me to support my family financially. Just on this point, I think it's really important to emphasise that's nothing to be ashamed of. You shouldn't be ashamed of earning money for growing things. It's a skill, it's a lot of hard work. So why do I say it's not a job? Well, it's not a job in the traditional 9 to 5 sense. You will not work office hours. There won't be any set hours, and some weeks you'll have to work more hours for less result, and some weeks you'll get huge results by doing very little work at all. This is something that I've had to come to terms with and actually manoeuvre around. Let me give you an example of this. If you work in the plant production industry, you really can't take time off between March and June. That's a long time, and you can't take that time off. If you get a busy weekend, you have to work the weekend. If you get adverse weather, you have to work a little bit longer to look after your crop. You can't book a week's holiday at that time of year. So it's not a job in the traditional sense. You can't take annual leave, you can't take toil. And that's something that I actually see a lot of prospective growers, or perhaps younger growers, needing to come to terms with. Sure, one day you might be in a situation where you can employ loads of staff and you can take that holiday and the business will keep turning over while you're away on holiday. But in these early stages, when you're considering starting a food growing business, it's really important that you think about the fact that this is not a job. In the traditional sense, certainly, it's not a 9 to 5. If you ever add up the hours that you do in running a growing business, you will never, ever balance the sheet, in my opinion. And that's okay. And the reason I say that is because it is genuinely the job or lifestyle that gives you so much back. And that's really important to emphasise. This is not a job, it is a lifestyle. You live outside and your fate depends on what's going on with the weather. Your day is going to be shaped by the weather. I wake up in the morning here and I look out the window, and what I see will shape what my day is. If it's raining, I'm going to spend the day covered in waterproofs and maybe dry myself off, drying the boxes, drying the plants before I pack them. If it's sunny, I'll be wearing sunglasses, I'll have music playing. Your day is shaped by the seasons. It's like no other job out there. That brings me on to the second thing that you should think about before starting a food growing business. And that is the fact that you're going to spend a lot of your working day and your working life out of control. I've just said about looking out the window and that shaping what your day is. That's going to be the case in so many different ways. In your mind, if you're anything like me, you might be a bit OCD and you might think about how you're going to plan things out throughout the season. You've got an idea of what March is going to look like as a month, what you're going to be doing. But the truth is that you can't make a plan for that. You simply can't. The weather is going to have other plans. You might have a storm in February and maybe one of your polytunnels gets damaged. So then you spend a week repairing your polytunnel. And this is something that's really important. Sometimes you have to just think about how you will feel being out of control. Jack, who I work with here at Food Grower Academy, talks on this really well, that sometimes you just have to work with nature and you have to adapt to it. Some years things will germinate sooner, and some years you'll struggle to germinate those varieties at all. you're going to be out of your comfort zone and out of control for a lot of your working day. And for me, I'm somebody that likes to be in control quite a lot. So that was a big challenge, and that was something that I think you really, really should think about. Can you get comfortable, and can you actually start to take enjoyment in being out of control like that? I think you'll be able to do it. And because I know I have, and I'm usually very, very in control. So that's definitely the second thing that you should think about before starting a food growing business. The third thing that you should think about before starting a food growing business is one that's very, very difficult to talk about honestly, but I'm going to be very, very honest with you. It's really, really important that we're not bashful about the fact that we need to earn money. Everyone in this world needs to earn money. Sure, you can live self-sufficiently, but this week one of our cats got very ill. We needed to pay vet bills. We needed money to do that. And I'm not ashamed to say that I earn money through growing things. You know, I put a lot of work in. Instead of doing another job, I spend my time growing things, and I should be rewarded for that, and thankfully, thanks to Urban Herbs, I am. But the third thing that you really need to think about before starting a food growing business is the fact that it's going to take you quite a while to get to the stage where you are earning money. Now, for any business, they say it takes a couple of years before you can draw a decent wage packet from the business, and I think in horticulture, that actually takes even longer. Let me unpack that for you a little bit. In the growing calendar, we only ever get one chance at spring every single year. So when you do your first spring as a commercial grower, that's your first chance. It's your first day basically doing that particular job, and you won't get another chance until next year. So the learning curve is very, very steep. For this reason, I would say that you need to think about and be honest with yourself, with your family, with your partner, that actually you might not earn a decent wage packet for a little while until you get your food growing business set up. There might be a little bit of financial outlay in terms of building polytunnels, resources, seeds, compost, whatever. But it might be a little while before you actually generate some income. And actually there's going to be some times that you make mistakes, but that's okay because you learn from these mistakes. But those mistakes might end up costing you money. I'm going to share something with you now that one of the most difficult things that I struggled with when I was first starting Urban Herbs is I got crippling guilt when I went to a farmer's market and maybe I paid £35 to stand there. And once you factor in the loss of stock, I'd stood there all day and I'd lost my family £5. And I used to go home literally crippled with guilt because I wanted to help my wife put a roof over our heads, and I've effectively just cost money. And that's a natural part of the process. Don't worry if that happens. You're learning all the time, but you need to consider the fact it's going to take you a while until you start earning money. The fourth thing that I'd ask you to consider before starting a food growing business is that it's not the same as just expanding your hobby. And sure, there's a lot of admin that goes with starting any business. Forget about whether it's a food growing business, there's a lot of admin. You may need to register for VAT, you're certainly going to have to do a tax return. You're going to have to set up a business bank account, you're going to have to do marketing, and for some of you, those things will be big turn-offs. But they're all things that you wouldn't do if you were just doing this as a hobby. It's that sort of levelling up process. It's really not the same as just expanding your hobby, primarily because you need to do it as a job, and that means that you have to get up early most days during the growing season, you have to finish late. And very, very crucially, certainly in my industry, it means that you have to start going outside, going into the garden and getting busy, filming content or going into your growing space and actually potting things up, doing propagation before everyone else is ready to do so. So you know that feeling in March when you get that first sunny day and you go back out into the garden or your allotment and it feels amazing because spring's here. If it's your business, you're going to be out there 2 months, 2.5 months before everyone else. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, I go there, you know, every weekend or 3 times a week. You would probably have to go there every day or most days during that early spring period to get a head start. I'm out here in these polytunnels, you know, in January every single day potting up plants, and I've got music on and I generally love it. But you have to be really honest and you have to say that actually some days it's not that sexy because it is pretty cold, and you have to be really, really honest about that. There's lots of amazing things that come with this job, but you have to be really upfront and you have to say it's not just the same as expanding your hobby. The fifth thing that you should consider before starting a food growing business is the most important. And it's the one I'm going to talk on the most. It's the best job in the world. Seriously, you need to consider that, because I promise you, you will get hooked. It's a job like no other job that I've ever had. I don't spend the day watching the clock. I don't ever want the day to go quickly. I'm not bored. I'm very rarely sad or unhappy. As I just said, financially, it might not be the most rewarding job in the world, although actually, I'm lucky that I've got a business that's thriving. But in all honesty, I don't think that many people go into this industry to make tons of money. I think it's a vocational career. And it is a career, it really is. It's the best job in the world because you get to be outside. When all of your friends are working in an office, you get to be outside under blue sky. For most people, the seasons are just what they interact with each day as they walk between the front door and the car, and then the car and the office. But you get to embrace those seasons every single day, and that is so magical. I'm getting fired up talking about this because I love it so much. For me, this is my release. This is a big stress buster for me. I've had my run-ins with mental health, and my job helps me every single day. When you get that satisfaction of potting something up that you have grown, and then you see it develop, you nurture it, you look after it, and then you deliver that end product to somebody that's going to grow it on, or you provide microgreens that you have nourished to a chef who is delighted with the quality and delighted to receive them. Trust me on this, that's the best feeling in the world. And that's why this fifth reason you should think about before going into a growing business or career is the most important. You won't look back. Sure, you'll have some bad days. You'll have some wet days, some cold days. It's got all the apparent disadvantages that I've just mentioned. But when you are standing in your growing space, sunglasses on the back of your head, and you've got the biggest smile on your face, knowing that you are literally living your best life, it's the best feeling ever. And I really wanted to share that with you in this podcast this morning. I only hope that 10% of my love for this job has come across in this video. I can't actually communicate to you how much I love my job, and I think you'll love it too. If ever you've got questions, please feel free to fire me a message directly at Andy Grows Herbs on Instagram. But I'd also encourage you to join the Food Grower Academy. It costs £9.99 a month, and it provides me with the resources and the advice that I wish that I'd had 12 years ago. You get to talk to myself, Jack and Chris, all of whom have built growing businesses, and maybe we can cut out a few of the kinks in your journey. My name's Andy, and you've been listening to the Food Grower Podcast. 5 things that you should think about before starting your growing business.